Hello, listeners. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. If you are a longtime listener, welcome back. There are some new, exciting things happening with the podcast. First, if you want to keep updated with new episodes and what we have coming up, make sure to find us on Facebook and like the page. You can also make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to the podcast. Second, we are in the middle of a fundraising drive. We are looking to expand our reach and add more resources for production so that we can keep bringing you interviews from around the city. This includes finding new people interested in conducting interviews in their neighborhoods, but we need the financial support of the community members like you. To donate to the podcast, go to paypal.me/facesofgp. That's Faces of GP. I'm so proud to be bringing value to my community with educational and informative information to my neighbors in the city, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your support. Today, my guest is Duane Strawn, Director of the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Department of Grand Prairie. Duane talks to me today about his background as a landscape architect and how that fits into planning for a city. We talk about the unique vision of the Grand Prairie Parks, Arts, and Recreation Department compared to other cities and the city's innovative attitude towards progress. We also discuss some of the things in the works and how people can get more involved to have a voice in their local government. It was a pleasure getting to know him better during this conversation, and now here's Duane Strawn. How are you? We are just going to jump right in. And I'm here with you at the newly named Parks and Rec building. So what is it called now?
Well, it's always been the Parks Administration Building. And probably about 8 years ago, we were getting really more into the art side. And so we actually changed it to the Parks, Arts, and Recreation.
Oh.
And then with Rick Harold, Rick Harold came in early 2000s and is one of the top parks directors, not only in the state but in the nation. And huge visionary. And when he retired, there was just so much legacy that he left behind that both the mayor and the city manager really wanted to do something a little special. And so we actually named. It's still the Park Administration Building, but it's the Rick Harold Administration Building.
And just for everyone, he is still alive.
Oh no, he's alive and kicking. As a matter of fact, he's just was appointed to the Playground Adventures Board, which was one of his projects that's near and dear to him. So he's jumping in with both feet too.
That is amazing. I didn't even know that had happened, but he did make a point, I think, at his renaming to say, this usually is reserved for people that pass, and for me to still be alive and still get to see it is pretty cool. So. Well,
that's true, and we a lot of times we're joking about the Jenna P4 Memorial Bridge, because a lot of times you don't get to see that, and and there's a lot of reasons that you don't. I mean, laws are written for people who break it, not for those who follow the rules. But it is nice to see something that's named after you while you can still enjoy it.
I'd agree.
Not only your family can afterwards, but it's an honor you. So I think it was very cool that we were able to do that for him.
Yeah, I completely agree. So how did you get to be here? Where does your career lead you to this place?
Oh well, it's been how far we want to go back.
Well, go back to tech, because I think we were kind of talking a little bit. You have a landscape architecture degree.
That's correct.
So maybe go back to that. Like, what led you into getting that degree to start with?
Okay, well, when I got out of high school, I started at a junior college, South Plains College in Loveland, in mechanical engineering. I knew my brain works that direction. I like to solve problems, and so I was very interested. I could see things in my head. So engineers make a lot of money, so let's do that. And so I was 3 or 4 semesters there, and I was doing okay, but I was good in math. But you really, in engineering, you have to love it. Love math, because you're doing it day in, day out. And so I was taking some summer courses at Tech, and there's a huge courtyard it's called Holden Hall, and I was there for poli-sci or a government, and I was in there studying, And in this courtyard, it's multiple levels, and I just, that was fascinating me, and it was still design. And so I looked it up, and one, I didn't want to go through chemistry. There was something I didn't want to go through, and I had all the math that I needed, and like, well, heck, this time to jump. So I changed the majors, and just, I fell in love with landscape architecture. And when I got out, I still knew that I didn't think I wanted to be in the design studio, just doing that. I didn't have a clue what I wanted. But me and my wife moved to Delaware. That was, back in the late 80s. Landscape architecture wasn't a booming right then, and so there's 3 jobs that were open. There was one with the Parks Department in New York City, and it's like, no, thank you. And then there was one in South Carolina, which I was very excited about. When I called, they just filled that one. And then the other one was in Ocean View, Delaware, and it's like, okay, let's move there. Found out there were like 3 LAs from Tech that were a year ahead of me that were already there. So I was like, whatever. And so we loved that, and I enjoyed it. Learned a lot there, but there was still something. I loved what I was doing, but I was missing something, and we were starving, and I missed family. And I was like, look, if we're gonna starve, let's go back to Texas, and we'll start with family while we're looking. And so I got back, and I jumped in with an irrigation company that was, so I'm still kind of doing some stuff in landscape architecture. But my LA future was looking a little bleak because there still wasn't a lot out there. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, maybe I need to go to a different direction. And then the city of Amarillo opened up.
Oh. And
they were looking for a landscape architect. They called it the resource manager. And it's like, okay, I could do that. And even in school, we didn't do much with parks departments or city hubs, and it was like, hey, if they're willing to, Amarillo's just 2 hours away, because my wife is from the Panhandle, which is like an hour north of Amarillo, so hey, let's do that.
So is it mostly like working for businesses or developers, or like who, like back then, who was a big industry to be doing landscape architecture for?
Well, so in the big firms, the like CIVICS would go to the firm and do their landscape art. They do park planning, all their design. So they're and then corporations, not as much in the bigger firms, not as much residential as it is commercial. Just big land planning, and some of landscape architecture is plants, but a big chunk of landscape architecture is just land planning, and how the flow of things are going. You work closely with the civil and architecture.
So even like runoff and like all that kind of stuff. Interesting.
Grading and drainage. It's all kind of tied in. I enjoyed that. I ate that up, and it's like, well, let's give it a shot. And so I went up there and interviewed and got the job. So we moved down there, and it wasn't long before it's like, oh, I really like this, because not only was I over our capital improvement projects, our park projects, but I was over the aquatics, the recreation, athletics, and so I like that interaction. I like that public service. So it's like, okay, I've kind of figured out my niche now. I still get to do landscape architecture, but I get that other side where I'm managing people, and it's not just projects. It's the whole other side of public service that I really like. And so jumped into that, and I was assistant director there for 12 years. And then I had worked with Rick on the state organization, it's TRAPS, on a couple of things, and he was crazy, and and so I was looking. We just got back from a TRAPS board meeting, and we kind of got reprimanded by our executive on, okay, y'all wanted this answer board. But y'all, as a board, you're not going on this board, on this page to answer what people are asking. Y'all got to do that. So when I got home, I did that. And I just happened to jump over on the job link, and Grand Prairie had a job opening for a landscape architect under Rick, and it's like, oh, And what I really loved about the Metroplex is Amarillo was very, very conservative, still are. And they wouldn't allow us to hire any consultants. And so I hired another landscape architect, and we did all of our in-house designs. So it went slower, but you kind of get inbred on your ideas. And unfortunately, a lot of the smaller cities were coming to us for the ideas, and it's like, where when you look at the Metroplex, it's nothing to go and talk with 10 of your colleagues and say, hey, do you mind, can we come by and look at this building, at this party? Yeah, come on. And
you mean from city to city?
Yeah, from city to city. And everybody's completely open. Say, this works well. Okay, don't do this. This didn't work well at all. And you just, there's such a value in hearing someone else's do's and don'ts, that it helps you on your project, because nobody is creating anything from scratch.
Right.
You're learning what everybody else is doing and how to do it better, and we're all on the same page. And I could see that, from the organization that I was in, how cool that was, and Emerald just wasn't that way. And so the opportunity to come to Grand Prairie and work with somebody of the caliber of Rick Harold is like, hey, so he flew me down here, and we interviewed. It was an all-day interview. And the best part of that interview is he took me to the racetrack for lunch. And so I'm in a suit, and I'm talking to this professional, and he's asking me these questions, and I'm trying to listen and formulate the very best answer that I can. And all these people are screaming and hollering and going crazy because it's race season. And it's just, and all around me, it's like, I don't know if it was a test, but I'm trying to focus, and everybody's yelling, and I've never been in a racetrack before. So this is the first one. So, but at the end, I get the job and moved down here, and then it was just, you hit the ground from 0 to 100.
Wow.
I thought I was moving fast in Amarillo, and nowhere close.
Really?
To the way that Rick Harold, runs.
Right. Yeah. He. So, what year was that when you came over here?
2006.
Oh, so it's been like a while. Yeah.
Yeah, about 14 years.
And you stayed as landscape architect until you got promoted?
Well, so still landscape architect, once in LA, but my job duties over here was just assistant director. And he was looking for a number 2. And because we had a park planner already, and Rick actually kept the park planning department under him, while I took the lake parks and park maintenance, and those under my wing, and which was in all the special events.
So with the Parks Department, and since I'm trying to do as much of a civics education to people that live in this city as I can. So what is under the Parks and Recreation umbrella in the city government? Like what are y'all in charge of?
Well, so we're pretty diverse. Maybe more diverse than a lot of cities, but the basic things, which is our park system, our recreation system. Those are real basic with the pools and all that. But Grand Prairie goes a step further, and we have the cemetery. We have a conference center, and so basically, we'll put you in a class, right after you're born, and we have public service all the way up until it's time for you to leave the earth, and then we have a place in Grand Prairie in our system that we can put you for eternity.
Wow, that's interesting. So is that how you kind of structure the needs of what a city needs? Is like, how much do demographics play into like how you plan for how things are going to grow? That might be a really complicated question.
But a lot of it is just the needs. You're correct, and the vision of the city. Some cities wouldn't want to get involved in cemeteries. Some cities wouldn't want to get involved in an indoor water park. Some people wouldn't get involved in a lake parks system, because there's a lot that goes into that to run it. But what the nice thing about Grand Prairie is they look at, and this is from the mayor all the way down to our entry level workers, is everybody is in it for what's best for our citizens. And we are a critical part of the city because we provide the quality of life. And it's one thing to have great roads. It's another thing to have running water and sewer and all those necessary things. But without quality of life, do people stay here, or do they Do they live in Arlington and drive in?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that. So our part, you know, when you look at essential employees, is across the board. You know, we saw throughout the nation how critical and essential the park system is, because our park system has never in 2020 has never been busier. The golf courses, you know, we projected them to take a loss. Our lake parks, we projected them to take a loss, and we were completely blown away by people they had to get out of the house. They were locked up, but they had to get out of the house, and so they went out and they used our trails, they used our playgrounds, they used the open spaces for picnics. They completely blew up the lake parks. If I'm lucky enough to have an RV, I might as well stay at the lake in quarantine than stay at my house. And so the reservations went through the roof.
Wow.
Our day use was limited only because we had to quantify how many people could be in there. But we were consistently sold out on our lake parks camping sites. Even on our holidays, we had to cap the holidays for everybody's benefit and safety, and then we started turning people away. On the very first Easter we had to block off a lot of the parking lots in area parks, so to limit. So you can walk in, I can't keep you from doing that, but we can't have everybody driving in.
Right.
So that just meant everybody wanted to go do something. We had to put things in place to limit that. So it's that quality of life that after I work my 8 or 10 hours a day, I'm tired, I'm stressed out, I need some place to go. Even if I want to go walk a trail or go ride a bike or go out to the lake, walk the trails, go fishing, just take my boat out, whatever it is, I want to do that, and give me some place nice to do that. And it all goes back to the quality of life.
Wow. So like if a city was not, if y'all weren't going to do the lakes and all that, who would be in charge of that normally?
It'd all be private.
It'd all be private.
So if there's a need out there, somebody will pick that up. And we try not to compete as much as possible with the private industry. That's not what we do. But in some areas we do get close and we compete. I mean, take the Epic for instance. Epic is an immense, amazing workout facility on half of it, and we do compete against other things. But you know that was one area where the rec centers all have that component. They all have a pool component. You know, they all have a bath, so they all have that gym. But you know, this is the Epic is a little different than our other rec centers in the amount of workout facilities. But when you look at the industry, let's just start in DFW, that's the trend in most cities that are building new rec centers, is they incorporate a large aquatic and a large workout facility, because that's what their citizens are asking for.
Right. When I lived in Plano for a couple short years, and I think it was Plano that I was in, they had the indoor facility. So when we were talking about Epic, when it was coming along, or even Epic Waters, I had no idea what it was going to actually look like. And that was astonishing, because I thought that the Plano Center was nice. And it is, but it's nothing compared to that. So it's like, you know, to get people on board with that type of vision, is that hard to do when it comes to planning for something of that size and sheer scope? Because that whole area over there it's not just the Epic Waters, it's the whole planned unit. So, I mean, do y'all get a lot of pushback against that, or how does that work with communicating?
No, and I'll tell you why. Back in I don't know if it was 99 or 2000, Mr. Hart had just been hired, and then he, just a few years later, he brought on Rick. And both of those are visionary. Both of them are big picture people. And they were able to sell the citizens of Grand Prairie on a quarter-cent sales tax. So the citizens voted, and that's in perpetuity. The citizens voted a quarter-cent sales tax to better the Parks Department. And so in 2000, 2001, we had this huge bond election, and spent a lot of money. But completely revamped almost the entire Parks Department. You know, all the new parks, redoing parks, and of course that's been 20 years ago. But since then, when we went back, I think our next one was the summit. When we went and we wanted to do the summit, it was a bond election, and it was overwhelmingly yes, because we had proved that if you give us, this is, you know, we don't take this money for granted. We try to be good stewards. If you'll give this money, this is what we'll do, and this is how it will positively impact you and Grand Prairie. And so we did that, and then the next one was, I think, the ballpark, and that one was, you know, and then we jumped over to Epic Waters. Playground was involved, and every time that we have gone to the voters, one, we've built trust over 20 years. We've built trust. If we tried to do Epic Waters back in 2000 without any trust, I think that would have been a harder, but they did, you know, give us the nod back then, and so we work, you know, every day to make sure that we're giving the citizens everything that they deserve to get, and to continue that trust, because if we ever lose that trust, then next time we want to go to them for some money for something new and improved, that might be a tough deal. And also, you know, I think we've proved to them that it's a go big or go home. Everything we do, and the wow factor is in everything that we design. If it's not, like when we were building the Epic, I don't know how many, it was, you know, 48, 49 Epic encounters, because we met with everybody on what do you want. We wanted your thumbprint on that, and consistently between us and the consultant is it well, I don't know, is that epic enough? And if the answer was no, it's like, okay, up your game, you know. But it was and the council is 100% on board with go big or go home, and but now the citizens are too. If you look at our special events, whether it's Prairie Lights or whether it's Main Street Fest, is we don't halfway do anything. It's just, I mean, that's just not what we do. It's a fantastic venue, it's a fantastic event, or we don't, our citizens deserve more, we don't do it.
Right. So is the Parks and Recreation part of the city the biggest or the largest in terms of its size or its scope of what it's in charge of?
We're probably tied for third. I think PD and Public Works are there, just, you know, but yeah, we're a big department.
So when it comes to the Parks Board, so talk about the difference between a park board and the Parks and Recreation for the city, the employees, and what you guys do, because I think there's a difference.
There is.
Yeah, so talk about that a little bit.
So the Parks Board is they're a recommending body, and each one of the board members is appointed by a councilman, you know, from their district, and
which includes the mayor.
That's it.
Yep.
And so, you know, we have 9 members, and we have monthly meetings with them. They don't get deep. They're not a policy. They're just recommendation. They like to be involved in and be advocates. Where, you know, we bring something to them, they vote on it, and then that goes on to council. Like the name of the building, you know, had to go through them. And so once they recommend it, then we send that over to city council for them to do. But they're highly engaged in you know, our master plans, really our events, everything that we do. They show up for volunteering. They help us. Like we're doing a couple of master plans, one for Lloyd, one for Mi Familia Park, and we run that past them.
What is that? Mi Familia Park? I've not heard that.
Well, it's the old Mountain Creek Lake Park.
Oh.
Yep. And
okay.
When it was transferred from City of Dallas to the City of Grand Prairie, we changed the name to Mi Familia, my family park, and we're going through a master plan process there.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yep. And so all the neighbors of that park, everybody in that district, there's a couple of precincts right there. We'll have another public meeting May, to show them where we've come. The first one was tell us what you want. There were surveys, and so we heard what they asked for. But Park Board, it gets just as involved. They ask questions and they help guide. You know, staff is, we're very good at what we do, but we always need extra eyes and extra viewpoints. And so, you know, we'll take those comments and we'll implement them, and then all that, once it's approved, then it goes over to council, and council looks at you know, did Park Board approve this? Yeah, and then that gives them a lot more confidence that, you know, someone that I appointed looked at it, they liked it, and so I feel a lot better about approving it also.
Yeah, that you know, I talk a lot about parks. I mean, boards and commissions for the city, and making sure that people know that they exist. And you know, I mean, my dad was a park board member for a long time, and I know how much fun park board, you know, it is. It's a lot of fun to be on. But there's a lot of parks and boards and commissions for the city, and I feel like that is such a great way for people to understand how their city government works, and then also to have a voice, but then also to be advocates in the community for, okay, this is why we need this is what we're doing with it, and have those understanding that a lot of, maybe, because the city government, you guys can't go around talking to every single person, right. but boards and commissions can do that really, really well. Absolutely. And so I always plug those as much as I possibly can, and especially to be a part of the ones that don't have a whole lot of involvement or engagement, that are maybe a little bit more involved from a time perspective or something like that. But Parks Board is a lot of fun. You get to go do a lot of fun stuff.
And you know, Councilman Greg Gessner, when I got here, he was on the Park Board, and then he you know, he transferred and went one step higher as city council. But you see that a lot. It is those that are actively minded, that they want to be involved. One, I mean, you know, you got P&Z, you know, you got all those boards that, and then you got Park Board. You know, who would want to be on Park Board?
I mean, and you get to go to fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. And you know, and people like your dad, he still stayed in contact. And once a Park Board member, you're always a Park member. You know, you don't have a seat at the table anymore, but that's still in your heart.
Yeah.
And so,
as a voting member.
Yeah. And so you know, so who would want to be on the Park Board? But it is. You know, and it's fun, but it's involved. We require a lot of passion from you. We require a lot of time. You know, because you know, we invite you to every one of our 800 special events. Pre-COVID, we're trying to get back there. And our Park Board meetings go, you know, 2 hours plus sometimes. But there's a lot of information. Each one of them gives a piece. You know, our staff sends them their updates, whether it's for rec or athletics or the lake or whatever, and they give they're involved in it and ask lots of questions, and they give their reports. And so, you know, it brings everybody up to speed. Everybody knows where we're at. Lots of question and answer, but very passionate, and they all dive in with both feet, and it's a great board.
It is. I think that the involvement of the city in this particular city is very special. I think that people really are engaged and they really want to know. So, kind of talking about like the parks and recreation system as a whole, we know that, you know, something they're starting to talk a lot more about lately is the importance of vitamin D, the importance of being outside and what that does for our immune systems. And, you know, do you feel like having those parks and all that, I mean, how much do you think that helped people overcome something like a COVID situation? I mean, you talked a lot about people camping, and you talked a lot about that. I mean, just from a mental health perspective, it would seem to me like having a really healthy parks and recreation system in a city is vitally important. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to jump straight to the mental capacity. Not only is vitamin D huge, but even if, let's assume you don't pay attention to what vitamin D does, just to walk outside, to get out of a dark house. Hopefully you got lots of windows that if you got to stay in there, but just to walk outside. Point in case, my son got COVID. Last March, it just hit, and we were dodging everybody, and my son was going to UTA, and he got COVID, and so we all had to quarantine home. And so, he was sequestered at the back of the house. We had the plastic, and we'd feed him, through a little slit, and he wasn't able to interact at all. And after whatever 10 days, we let him out, and he went and got tested, and he was going to go to his girlfriend's afterwards. And he called me, and he was just devastated because he tested positive again.
Oh no!
And he said, I'm gonna drive around for 3 or 4 hours, and I'll be home. And so he got home, and we all moved, and he went back to his room. But then we started letting him have, it's like in prison, he'd get an hour yard time. So he'd walk through the house, he'd go outside, and just lay on the trampoline.
Yeah.
Just to be outside, and it just did tons for his mental capacity.
Yeah.
Just being outside and to walk in nature, it doesn't take much to understand how much I feel better.
Yeah.
Just out walking, to get out of whatever you're at and use our amazing trail system. Go sit at the lake, whatever. Just go sit at the park, just to get out and because nature has an amazing way of calming things down.
Oh yeah.
And kind of bringing the peace. And letting you kind of decompress, because you're going to have to go back sooner or later. But being outside, and so you have to have an amazing park system. It all goes back to that quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a park system as a backup or as a support, then we're not doing our job.
Yeah, and my daughter and I were out at Playground the other day, and we got to go be just there with other people. And so you're seeing kids run around, and you're seeing them play together, and you're seeing them laugh. And there's something that does for your whole outlook on life.
Absolutely.
Like your perspective. It's just like, okay, things will be fine. Things are going to be okay. These kids are going to grow up, and they're going to be all right. And so, it's just so important to have that. And I think, just not the isolation, just to be around other people. We have a lot of opportunities for that. But, one of the things I wanted to talk about is we've got summer coming up. And I know that for the last year, I think that the classes and some of the things that y'all offer have kind of had to take a back burner. But for the summer, you guys have a lot of programs for the school kids. That's something that I was on the Housing and Community Improvement Commission,
Right.
and we would hear how can we put some of those federal grant dollars to use, and we would always have somebody come in from one of the rec centers and asking for money because those summer programs feed kids and
Sure.
things. So what are y'all doing this year for that?
We're back.
You are? Okay.
Now it's a limited capacity, but it's pre-COVID, just in a smaller capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll keep creeping up. But we still got the meal program going on. We still have our summer camps. We still have in our summer camps. We still have our field trips where you're actually putting them on a bus and you're going somewhere. So now we have to modify what bus we're taking and where we're going. Like we've got a deal working with one of the movie theaters that that theater will be just for our kids,
Mm-hmm.
so they can all spread out. And so it's just it is trying to get back to normal.
Yeah.
And so we are we're open every 30 days. We have a matrix every 30 days based on the numbers and the state mandates and the county mandates. We're opening up a little bit more, and trying to get back to our pre-COVID hair on fire, blowing and going. Everybody's stressed out because there's so much going on, and we just miss those days.
Yeah.
Because as a public servant, especially the Parks Department, is 100% of what we do is for our citizens.
Mm-hmm.
There's I can't think of anything that we don't do that doesn't impact our citizens directly. Because if we don't do it, it doesn't get done, and the citizens don't have that ability. So that's the benefit of being a taxpayer,
Mm-hmm.
is having those things. Some things are free, some things are paid, but it's that park system, it's that quality of life system that I can tap into at any time to help me with my day-to-day insanity.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here as I'm talking to you, and I was talking about being outside. Like, this pollen is like killing me lately. So it's like being outside, I'm like, well, I guess it's spring back in Texas. We're outside because like I'm sitting over here sniffling, and but it's nice to have, we definitely have to have all of what you just said. And one thing I wanted to go back to is traps. What is traps?
So our every organization, every profession has an organization. Every profession has an organization. Our national is called the NRPA, National Parks and Recreation Society. So NRPA, and then each state has their own. And so TRAPS is the Texas Recreation and Park Society, and that's what like everybody in our industry needs to give back. And so that's the ability to give back to your profession, where you can sit on the board, you can sit on a committee, and help the state of Texas provide support and question answer materials, education for parks departments, as well as the national does also. And so I was on the TRAPS board when I was in Amarillo for our region. I was the regional director, and then when I moved here, I just got so involved. But like Erin, who's my assistant director, she is our president for TRAPS. She's the youngest president that I've ever had, and to be president of a state organization the size of Texas is pretty impressive, and it does shine the spotlight on Texas, on Grand Prairie. But what that does is at any time we can either call our North Texas colleagues, or we can tap into the TRAPS website or their phone bank to ask questions like, is anybody opening up swimming pools yet?
Right.
Has anybody opened their senior centers yet? What are you doing with basketball? Like on basketball, outdoor, we physically had to remove the basketball rims.
Because people were going out there and playing.
And the bad thing is the neighbors are calling, there's 16 kids playing. Well, who has to do that? Police or code? and the police don't want to be put in that limelight. It's tough enough anyway.
Right.
So we had to remove them. It's those kind of things where we were, for the past 12 months, everybody was making it up as we went statewide, and so we were learning. And anytime we presented something across the street on, here's what we're going to do with pools, here's our recommendation, and here's why, it was North Texas. This percentage of the pools are opening across the North Texas. This percentage is staying closed. Nobody is opening the senior side yet. And across the street at city manager's office, nobody wants to be the first. We don't want to be last. We want to kind of fall in that, okay, what's the trend? Okay, everybody is opening up there, so okay, we're ready to go. And we don't want to be guinea pigs, but we also want to drag the tail end up, as the last one to do something.
Well, and you made a good point, like with kids playing basketball, that's a great example. We're seeing that kids that are bored and kids that don't have any way to go out and use their energy effectively will use it in other ways. And, especially with kids, and especially with kids right now, their mental health is really affected by all this and by not being able to go out and be around each other. Taking down a basketball goal might seem like a small thing, and it's an answer to a problem, at the time when you didn't know any better. But I bet that broke y'all's heart.
Well, it did, and what made it worse is you could drive by and they were making up games.
That is so fascinating.
They still have the basketball.
And
they were making up games on what to do without a hoop.
Well, when I would drive by the playground, the park would be locked. But then right next to it in the field, there'd be kids playing, and I'm like, this seems so weird. Like, what?
and to be serious is there were parents that would lift their kids over the fence and sneak through, and play. It's like, come on, it's locked. It says locked, and that was hard because when we opened Playground, grand opening, BJ Nichols, who's the park board chairman, and I were standing there, and I can't tell you which one of us got emotional, but we were looking and watching. It was just crawling with adults and kids. And one of the beauties about Playground is you feel comfortable getting on as an adult, getting on any plaything with the kid. And other parks, it's like, no, that's really for kids.
I was thinking that exact same thing when I was swinging. Because I was swinging, I was like, normally this would be pumping like I felt like I was going to tip it over. Yeah. But in Playground, never, not once.
And so we're sitting there and we're watching these adults play with kids. And it was like, we worked like, the vision is 5 years old plus, and the last 2 years have been insane, with the vision and the drawings and the going back to the drawing board, and to see it built, and these kids, it was just, you could see it, and it's like, okay, this is why we do this.
Yeah.
This is why we do this, is to see the kids that are happy, and whatever happens at home, this is the one place they can let loose, whether you have a disability or you don't. You can let loose, enjoy yourself. There's no worries, there's no stress. It's just, it gives you a place to take a quick time out, enjoy yourself, and it's those type of laughter that it is like, this is why we do what we do.
100% agree. Every time I go over there, I'm always struck kind of emotionally because there are so many kids and are so many people playing at the same time. And that whole area is not even finished yet.
No.
You guys have, what, 2 more phases?
Well, probably depends on how you do it, 7 or 8 more phases.
Wow.
So each one of they're little pods, but we're not even halfway through.
Wow.
We did a big chunk the first time with all the, but we have more phases to come, and so when this thing is finished, it'll be 10 or 12 acres. It's just amazing. There's nothing like it in the state.
That's yeah, and like a lot of the park system is they're not income producing. You have these things that are needing to be maintained, but they're not producing income.
Right.
So you guys have income producing properties in the Parks and Rec department. Is that pretty abnormal to like a normal parks?
No, I mean they're called an enterprise fund, which means they don't get tax dollars. And so like the cemetery, the Ruth E. Jackson Center, which is our conference center.
You mean ongoing tax dollars?
Ongoing.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But to be built, they have them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And then, but operating is, now we will subsidize or reinvest if you can't make your budget, because all of our venues are meant to serve our citizens, and you don't want to price yourself out, but they do have to make the revenue. Lake Parks is a prime example. Is they get 0 tax dollars. They don't even get a reinvestment if they have a bad year. So everything at Lake Parks is revenue fee driven.
Wow.
So if we have a great year and we hit all our holidays and we have good weather, then we pay all our bills and we operate in the black, but that money gets reinvested in the park. If we have a bad year, is we do have reserves, but if we have a bad year, then that unfortunately, the way that scenario is there could be either we don't put anything back in the park, or if it's bad, it could affect people's livelihoods.
Mm.
So those kind of things, and that's the only one like that that's different. Everything else has investment. Golf is the same way. They produce revenue, but in a bad year, we'll step in and kind of help them out.
Is that what, like, so a municipal golf course is owned by the city?
Yes.
Yeah, and how many do we have?
We have 2.
We have 2.
Yep. So Fangle Ridge is an 18-hole, and it's out down by the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Prairie Lakes is a 27-hole,
Mm-hmm.
but both of them are municipal courses.
That's interesting. And like, I would imagine, and this is something I've talked about with other people before as well, Grand Prairie is such a long city in terms of geographically and how it's situated. So how much are y'all constantly developing that's not already developed in terms of land? Like, you as a landscape architect. So when we annex land, like, how much is constantly being worked on?
Well, so in the parks system, there's a lot of property, and when you look at our park system, is we don't have any prime high developable area. Everything that parks gets is down in the floodway and where the creeks.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. When you look at our consistently across, and that's nationwide. Is if the developer can't build on it, it's a great park. But with that in mind, though, is you have, let's say it is a floodplain, so there's water there somewhere, and which means there's creek and there's trees, and it's a fantastic place to put trails. It limits the use of it, like at McFalls Park, we have softball on one side of 3rd Street, and then baseball on the other. And when we get a hard, fast rain, those fields go underwater, and we've had flood damage. But a lot of cities, that's what they're given.
Prairie Lake's the same way.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
So it is, and hopefully it goes back down. But in 2015, the lake was under 16 feet of water for 3 months.
Sheesh.
That was May, June, and July.
Mm-hmm.
That's our prime season. But the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will tell you this is flood control first, water source second, and recreation is way down bottom.
Right. That's a really good point, and this is something I've heard a couple people say when it comes to grading and flooding and all that. When it comes to developing and development, how and if you have those issues with like how it affects the neighborhoods and all that stuff, how much time and how complicated is that to like plan out? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
question?
Well, but a lot of that is fun, and that's kind of what we do, especially landscape architects, because let's just say a big developer comes in and he has this huge chunk of land, and there's going to be some low-lying area that he can't develop, but that's also a prime spot for at least the nature side of parks, and so that's when that makes most sense. And then now you're back to your problem solving, where you look at the grades, what the floodplain looks like. Is there any wetlands that you have to work around? And how do I get, because everything has to be ADA compliant, how do I get parking lot in a trail system down through this area and be ADA compliant? So it becomes that's a fun process.
It's a process that a lot of people don't know much about. You said wetlands.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that that are involved in something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there was one time I was working for an oil and gas company, and we helped people to, if a developer or anybody wanted to go in and build some type of infrastructure or whatever, there was a certain amount of pollution. You had to do an environmental impact study and like all these things about what that development would do to the environment. Part of that was making sure that it wasn't affecting wetlands, there wasn't any endangered species. I mean, that is an expensive process.
It is.
And when you have a developer come in, that is a process that they take over a lot of the funding for, correct?
Yes.
When you have a development, which is one of the reasons why cities want development, because the cities would have to do that otherwise.
Well, and that's also, when the developer comes in, he'll circle all those problem areas. And say, I'm going to donate this to the city for parkland.
Oh.
And so he doesn't have to really deal with it. He does have to deal with how his stormwater gets to that area, and that's where the detention basins and all that comes from. But predominantly, they don't want to mess with the federal 404 wetlands. They don't want to mess with floodplains. Because now they get, it benefits them to donate that to the city. We get some really cool parkland. It just comes with a lot of issues and a lot of management problems that we have to deal with.
And I would imagine that, every city's going to have its own unique issue with that because of just the topography that you have. Sure. But, and also developers come in and take care of a lot of the infrastructure, the roads and the plumbing, and, talk about that a little bit, like the complicated nature of that in a city.
Well, so, without roads, there's no reason for a park.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a developer to come in and understand, okay, at the end of this, there is a profit margin for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to put up this much money to get there. But with that, is you are putting in a really good infrastructure system, so that the new park can be accessible and it now can function, and then that's where all the homes come from, and the densities, which is more and more reason for more and bigger parks.
Yeah,
that's why not everybody is a developer, because it's a time hog. It's complicated, and there's a lot of money involved, a lot of money at stake.
There is, yeah, and I think that it's something that a lot of people don't give it enough credit for how complicated it actually is. And even from a development standpoint, about like bringing in grocery stores, bringing in different types of like commerce. it's not as easy as people think.
No.
Because it's really, there's so many things that go into that. And that's one of the reasons I always encourage, I'm like, get to know your boards and commissions, because especially your planning and zoning, because you could learn a lot just from that process. And the more that you know about how city government works and how those little details, the more frustrating it is when you see people online or something that are saying things that are untrue, because you're like, I just wish I could, correct that. How difficult is that as an employee to just not want to jump into every conversation?
Well, you only do that once or twice, and then you figure out, okay, I'm not doing that again. But it's something very similar. Is everybody wants an HEB, right? Or we have a lot.
What? I've never heard that before. No, I'm just kidding.
And we have a lot of neighborhoods who it's a food desert, but it's a business, and so all these grocery stores will look at the densities and say, okay, if I invest in this store, is there enough rooftops around it to support it? And is it nice for a small group of people? It's amazing, but is it going to go down the tube? And that's why, unfortunately, HEB is very, very particular of where they go, but also any grocery store chain. They have, sometimes it's nothing personal, this is a business, but there's people sitting around the table that are looking at data that says, this is a good spot, this is not a good spot. They would love to have 100 good spots, but they're not all good spots. And unfortunately, if it's not going to support it, you're just not going to get that in. But that's where our economic development team is trying to do this and trying to do that. Because once you get some of these things to fall, now some of the grocery stores are going, okay, hey, let's take another look at this. And then once the grocery store goes in, then the other things, it's like Epic Central, is you look at Epic East, Epic West. Once you see something that's starting to catch fire, then everybody wants to jump on. And now you're looking at 161 completely blow up, but you start seeing Epic everywhere. They took that because they see that was kind of started the fire, and everybody wants to be part of that. It's the fear of missing an opportunity, and it's those kind of things. So we have a very important role, but also our economic development team has a very important role, because some things you just have to get in place before, and then all these things start to pile on, and it starts to become a huge development.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I feel like Rick Harold was always really good at, and seems like he was really good at, is you have those special personalities that are really good at like getting people really excited about something. And that's not to be taken for granted or taken lightly, because you make a good point. It's not that city government doesn't want to give the citizens the things that it wants. It's that, how do you go about doing it where you're bringing in those people to be excited about the same thing and get them on board with the vision to see something that might not exist yet down the line. And that's harder than people really understand. And then you have then once something blows up, you have the opposite end of like, oh my gosh, this is so quick, like breaks, you go into a moratorium for apartment housing as an example, because then it's like, okay, this is really exciting that everybody's on board, but we need to kind of slow down because they're everywhere and we don't know how to control everything. So government is just one of those things that's like, it's getting the excitement and then slowing it down, and then constantly going back and forth between that. That's tricky.
Well, it is, and it's all about transparency also. And any of the boards and commissions are open to the public, so anybody can sit in. We had a gentleman sat in on a park board meeting 2-3 months ago, and he was just sitting in the back, just taking notes. It wasn't a citizen comment. And when he got through, he came up and introduced himself. And he was a transplant from like Illinois. He's working for a sister city of ours here, and he said, I'm just, I'm not happy where I am, and I want to get in the parks world, and so I'm just visiting and very inquisitive. But he just popped in, and then the city is very good about doing town hall meetings. Each of the council districts will throw 1 or 2 a year. And it's just a time for you to come, and they'll do some presentations, but also some of the key departments are there, and it's a question and answer. That's when the public can say, why is the crime so high? Why is there a pothole in there? Or why is my park not being mowed? It's that where you have those city departments there that as a taxpayer, we're all held accountable, and we can tell you what's going on. If we hear something that we hadn't heard before, it's like, hey, let's get together afterwards and we'll fix it.
Mm-hmm. So we only have a few minutes left. Surprisingly, it's been almost an hour. I know people always are, whenever I have these interviews, they're like, oh my gosh, it didn't feel like it was that long. And there's a couple other things I could ask you about, but I'll ask you this. So you talked about TROPS, you talked about the statewide, things, and then being a part of national. So being a part of those things, how do you feel like Grand Prairie is unique compared to maybe other places that you see? Or what are some of the things that we do uniquely or problems we don't have that other cities might experience?
Well, a couple. We're not conservative at all, and when I say that is we're not afraid to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Point in case, we did a really, really cool festival, and it's called Indie Fest, probably 10 years ago, and it was a I'm gonna blame it on Rick. It was a Rick Harrell brainstorm, and it was independent music, independent art, and independent movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's the Denton in him.
Yep. And so it was downtown Grand Prairie, and there was an old Taco Bell that used to be down by where Subway is.
Yes.
And we
spent many an evening in there.
Very good. We chose a really weird indie green. It was a green, and that building in the next couple of months was going to be demoed. And so we took the glass out. We painted the whole building green, and that was the beer garden. And we had two big stages, and we had the Uptown Theater was where we were doing the film, and then we had this art studio across the street, and it was just this big monster. It was going to be 2 or 3 days, and unfortunately we had like 10 people show up, and because it was State Fair, it was the weekend for the Red River Revival. What a reason that one weekend there was everything in the world. There were some big acts at Billy Bob's, and it was just huge bust. And of course it devastated because it looked fantastic. Now the artists still got awards, and of course if you win any type of a an independent film festival, whatever, you plaster that everywhere. So we still did the juried art, and we gave all these updates out, and they ran with it. They loved it. And we're just devastated, and we lost a lot of money, and it's like, okay, who's getting fired or what? and the council just said, okay, it was a bust, but it looked fantastic, and we had fun while we were there. It was that kind of thing. It was you're expected to go big or go home. And
Main Street Fest would be an example of something that went the opposite direction.
Absolutely. And so we are very comfortable with being go big or go home. It's got to be a wow, or don't even waste our time.
Right.
The other thing that is very important is that I've noticed is working with other cities is the Parks Department itself is at odds. The Parks people don't get along with the rec people, and it's just and Grand Prairie is just not that way. And we get along with our other departments extremely well. We try, every department loves to say yes. Because again, the only reason that anybody's coming to us to help is because they don't have the ability to do it themselves. And we, Parks needs streets and police and fire. We need all these departments to make ours go well. But also our city council all get along. They all, and everybody loves parks, which I love it. The city manager gets along. All the city manager's office gets along with our council. The council all gets along with our parks board. It's just you don't have those in other cities where you have a couple of people that are just going to vote no every single time. They listen, and everybody's on board, and then to have the support of our citizens when we do want to do something wild and crazy, that they're going to say, we trust you. Yes, we're going to vote that in, and you've always said that you're going to make this successful, and you're going to bring this across the finish line, and so we have the trust of the citizens. So, and you don't have that in all those are very unique that I've not seen. Every city has some of those, but when you put them all in one spot, we say it's a great place to live, work, and play.
That's exactly right. And as somebody that has grown up in this city, I never would have thought that the city would have looked like this whenever I was, growing up in the 80s. And
You used to have a bad reputation.
we did used to have a bad reputation. And it's really, really fun as a real estate agent, because when I get to talk to other real estate agents in other cities, I'm always kind of shocked at how I'll say the things that we have here, and they're like, you do? And it's a point of pride. And so, but I really appreciate you talking to me today.
It's been fun. I enjoyed it.
Yes, and I just want to say this is just so much fun to watch. It's so much fun to see everything that's happening here, and I'm just really excited for all the other fun stuff to come in the future, because there's a lot.
It is. We got to get COVID out of the way, and we're just back to hitting on all 8 cylinders.
Yeah, I'm ready for that just to be done. So, but thanks. Have a great day.
Anytime. Thank you.